Oh, how are your feet? Hurting a lot? Mine are hurting a lot. Who's getting married? Are you still excited or are you just a bit jaded now? Come on, you're still getting married. Any grooms here? I can see one there, not putting his hand up. Well done, guys. Sitting here Saturday afternoon and the rugby's on and you're talking about flowers. Very, very, very well done. So as you can see, we're going to have a lovely chat about flowers just for about 15-20 minutes. I think they are hugely important. You can have a very simple, elegant reception room and put flowers in it and it can be all the decoration you need. They really do make a massive impact. And your bouquet as well, your bridal flowers, probably one of your most important accessories on the day. That's something you're going to carry and will be in all your photos. So lots to think about when it comes to colours and styles and budgets and scents and all kinds of things. So I am no expert. I would really like you to welcome the florist who's created all these wonderful arrangements, who really is an expert. Please welcome Andy Devonport from Wild About. Hi Andy. Hi, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing all these lovely flowers. Now, we'll start just and have a quick chat about the ceremony and the bridal flowers, and then we'll move on to talk about reception. So I can't resist picking it up because it is a beauty. Let's have a little chat about the bridal bouquet. So, how do we decide on the style of the bouquet, whether we're having something kind of long and trailing or round? Or...
The style of the bouquet really needs to be decided on the dress. You should take a picture of your dress into the flower shop, speak to the florist, and they will advise you on what kind of style of bouquet is going to actually complement the dress. You don't want something that's going to fight with the dress.
So the dress is all important.
The dress is hugely important.
And if you're wearing something very slim and slinky, I guess you don't want a great big...
You don't want to be hiding things. You're both there to complement each other. The flowers should complement you, and not, one shouldn't try and hide the other or fight with the other. So.
And I think people worry about, not being sure whether they should have something very classic or something very contemporary. How do you kind of know what you are?
I mean, to be honest, I think most young brides would like to class themselves as modern, but modern and contemporary, they still can have that timeless twist to it. Most people don't want cutting-edge modern design. We create bouquets for catwalks and for photo shoots. People never order them. It's a bit like fashion. What you see on the runway is not actually what filters down.
What you want to wear.
Exactly. But having said that, it doesn't have to be frumpy. Traditional still can be classic, beautiful, timeless, elegant, all those things, but with a slight modern twist to it.
And where can we get inspiration from? I mean, on this bouquet, but there's a beautiful brooch, so is that taking inspiration from the dress?
Exactly. If once the florist has seen, we have a whole range of brooches at Wild About, and we can then match something which is going to blend, tone nicely with the dress.
And when we've got an idea of perhaps the shape or the style, I think I certainly worried about, how do you have an idea what colour you go for with the bouquet?
This part of the day, the colour really is your personal choice. It's up to you. You're not really governed by anything, and they don't have, what you have colour-wise for the ceremony or the church does not have to represent and match what you're going to have later on for the wedding breakfast.
So you can have
two completely different looks. It's really about your personal choice. It's your character. It's your, the femininity of you can be interpreted into your bouquet.
I love that. A friend of mine had sort of very soft pinks and pastel colours for her ceremony, and then the reception was, really bright and completely different. And I think we think everything's got to match, but actually...
It keeps people guessing.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 people do run with a theme all the way through, but it's actually quite nice to, people will second guess, oh yeah, she's carrying peach, it's going to be, pastels back at the reception, but no, you can really blow the braids out the camcorder and go mad with colour.
Have something really fun.
Exactly, really
now,
fun.
This sounds really silly, but how do we hold it? Because I see a lot of brides doing this, and a lot of brides swinging along like this, a lot of wet stems on the dress like this, so we don't want any of those options. I know you probably don't want to hold it, but I'm going to leave. Show us how to hold it.
That's the correct way. Holding it slightly down.
So quite naturally with your hands?
Quite natural. You can hold them one-handed, because you do get that flexibility with a tied bouquet. With a fully wide shower, you've got to stand like that, and you can only be photographed front on, because if you get the side view, you can clearly see there's mechanics behind it, and that's not what the photographer wants to see. One thing to bear in mind, always chat to your florist if you're having a tied bouquet, and find out how long they generally leave their stems, because if the stems are much longer than this, then you start to do that. And you don't want green scuffs on your dress. You don't want wet stains on your dress. That's a comfortable length. You know, you're holding it the correct way. It's not too far away from my body, whereas if I had another 3 or 4 inches on, sometimes you see, you know, bouquets with very long stems.
And then you're almost like cradling it or something.
You can't hold it like that. You've got to stand like that. And if you're not comfortable, then you're not going to hold it right. You need to look like you're holding it comfortably, and it's second nature.
So have a little practice.
Exactly. I mean, a good thing is to go into the florist, you know, before the wedding, and ask him or her just to put together a simple bunch. It can be anything. It can be, you know, anything which they're throwing out, which is going over. Get them to tie it up, take it home with you and your bridesmaids, and all have a little practice, you know, over a glass of champagne or something, of how to hold the bouquet.
Walking around the city.
Exactly like you do. But if you get it wrong, then you know you can't change photos, and that does not look good.
No.
It looks good from my view, but from your view and the photographer's view, that's not what you want to see.
So comfortably carry the bouquet down your ceremony aisle. When you get to your altar or the front of your ceremony room, pass your bouquet to probably your chief bridesmaid while you're saying your vows, and then don't forget to get it back. We love it. So I left my bouquet at the altar, and the vicar had to come running, flinging himself down the aisle to give it back to me. So don't forget to take it back, so that when you walk back down the aisle with your husband, you have your bouquet in your hand with all the photos. Now let's move on to talk about these lovely ceremony flowers. Now again, how do we choose the style for the reception flowers? How do we choose the style? Are we looking around our venue? How do we get
the style again really needs to complement the building. You know, if you're in a modern gallery or a hotel, then yes, you can go modern, you can go less and more. If you're in a country house or a barn, you know, you want to be fairly traditional. I always say to all my brides, don't go to war with the decor. You know, if the walls are bright pink, don't choose purples and, you know, clashy colours like that.
So we're working with the environment. As you say, walk into a venue, you get a pretty good idea of what's going to look nice in there. And a colour that you like. I think some girls say, oh, I'm going to have all pink because it looks nice, but I don't really like pink. And well, you're going to be surrounded by this colour all day, so it's about
when you go into the venue and you do a site visit with your florist, he or she is bound to be able to advise you on colours that will work in there and picking out elements of the venue. And if there's nothing that you can find from that, then you wouldn't have booked it anyway. So you know you wouldn't. It will be a solution for you. Exactly.
Now we were saying yesterday about carpets, because I think a lot of girls, I certainly did, panic about having some horrible carpet on the floor of your reception venue and thinking you've got to stick with that. Does that matter?
First off, don't look down.
Don't look down.
All hotels and venues, they will have these heavily patterned, deep-coloured, rich, opulent carpets, and I get it. I know why they're there. You know, they see so much traffic, so much wear and tear, red wine, food, all the rest of it. Chocolate gatter gets trodden in, so they're there for a reason. But believe me, we've recarpeted venues before because it's like it can't go with the decor. But you know, by the time the tables are laid and the chairs are dressed and etc., and the guests are in there, the carpet fades into insignificance.
It just
really doesn't
matter.
become an issue.
And
you want to keep people looking up, not looking down.
It's always good to go into your venue when it's got tables set, because when they show you an empty room,
it looks very
you can't imagine
at that
it.
point,
It looks awful, doesn't it?
You know, crikey, I've got to spend a fortune in here to make this look
Big
good.
room. And actually you don't.
You don't necessarily.
So we'll come back to talking about centerpieces in a minute, but where else might we have flowers at the ceremony? I keep saying this, don't I? The ceremonies on the rain, at the reception venue.
Well, if Daddy's been generous with the budget, you can have them everywhere.
Good old Daddy.
But the places you really want to consider putting the flowers is main entrances, with people going in and out. Staircases, if you have one, because photographers generally love to snap a bride and a groom on a staircase. That doesn't mean you've got to dress the whole fit. Talk to the photographer and actually find out where he's planning to shoot you in the venue, photograph you in the venue. And it's from there that the florist then can work out where the flowers are best going to be used in shot. It's no use dressing a room where you're going to have one glass of champagne before dinner and then you move through and you never go back. It's a little bit of a waste.
So a couple of key points there actually. Photographers, when you see all these celebrity magazines and you see the bride and groom surrounded by flowers, they have just decorated an area for the photo. So
exactly. I mean,
you have your photo
exactly
area.
That, you heavily dress just one area where all the photographs are going to take place. And it obviously gives the impression that the whole house is dressed in the inch of its life, when actually it's not.
So we decorate for the photographer and decorate where people are going to see and spend time.
Where people are going to spend their time. Obviously the most important part of that day is tables, which we'll get to in a second. But you know, there's mantelpieces. If you're going to dress a fireplace, and there's going to be guests actually in the room, don't dress the hearth. Maybe candles. Dress the mantelpiece. The hearth looks great when the room is empty. As soon as you put people in front of it, again, you've spent money and no one can see it. It's like it's blocked. Whereas it's far better to spend the money and do a beautiful mantelpiece, something that can cascade down, candles, that kind of thing.
And what if we've got something, you know, a bit ugly, like a big radiator or a, you know, not very nice? Do we cover that in flowers?
Don't draw attention to it.
Okay.
There's one way of highlighting something not so nice, and that's trying to hide it with something.
With something lovely.
Exactly.
So we take people away from
it's far better to create your own feature within that room, to draw attention away from an ugly radiator or double doors to the kitchen or something along those lines.
And now, yesterday we were talking about fresh flowers on cakes. So would the florist be responsible for doing a fresh flowers on a cake?
I prefer to do my own flowers on a cake.
Right.
Some cake decorators are more than competent, and they're quite happy to, you know, to liaise with the florist and with the bride, and together we work out what roses we're going to use or what flowers we're using, and then we can either send them off to the cake lady and she will then dress them. But we prefer to actually wait for the cake to be erected, to be put up, and then we will dress. I mean, we recently did a wedding and we put 1,000 roses around the base of this cake, and it looked absolutely stunning.
So absolutely, if you think you've got suppliers, you're sort of almost linking suppliers together, so you want a cake with flowers on it, then you put those two suppliers in touch with each other.
Exactly, I mean that's what we're here for. You're employing all these people to create your day. You don't need the stress of it. You know, just give us the number and let us have the email addresses, and all good florists will liaise with all other suppliers. Because flowers kind of overlap with production elements, you know, candles and other things.
And a lot of you guys actually know each other quite well anyway, don't you? You work together all the time.
We do in London.
Everyone liaises together. Now let's chat about centerpieces, because I think they're probably what most of us are going to have at our wedding is something on the table. What do we need to think about in terms of the height? Let's talk about the height of things.
There's no hard and fast rules with table centres. The one height which you don't want is here.
Eye line. Here.
That's it, right across. If you're going for high table centres, I have this conversation with virtually every single bride that I do wedding consultations with. It doesn't matter if there's something in front of you, as long as it doesn't block you. Because the reality is, I'm never going to have a conversation. No one across the table is going to talk to the person opposite. I'll talk to the person here, the second person along, and the same the other side. But I want to see them. I want to be able to smile at them, or if they're having a joke, make out I get the joke. You know, so it's like, you know, you don't want anything to block it. But to move an inch just to be able to see the person opposite, that's absolutely acceptable.
If you do put flowers at eyeliner, and I have experienced this on a number of occasions, people will, if they can't see, they will take the flowers off the table and put them on the floor. And you will spend all this money, and people can't see each other, and it's blocking the conversation, and then they'll just move them.
It's a waste.
So low enough that people can easily see over the top, or slim and tall enough that people can chat around is the hard and fast rule.
I mean, there's plus and minus for both table centre designs, whether you have high or low. The plus point with the high one is that it actually gives the room drama. When you walk into a room that's full of low table centres, it looks beautiful, but there's a lot of stuff on a wedding table. You've got menus, you've got water glasses, wine glasses, champagne glasses, and if they're quite small and insignificant, it will be lost. And you know, when you look in, the room looks beautiful, but there's no wow factor. By having high table centres, or at least half of the tables high, which is a very good way to save some money.
Yeah.
You know, you put extra money into the high one and make them bigger. You know, they add the drama to the room.
So you can basically alternate. Exactly. I love the idea. So you might have, if you've got 12 tables, you might have 6 with high and 6 with low.
And the one drawback with the high tables is, unless you put further, more flowers around the bottom, once you are sat down, you're kind of looking under. Whereas the people on the low table, they get to see the beauty of them because they're sat at eye level.
But with a taller arrangement, I guess you can perhaps have little candles and things around the bottom.
You can never have too many candles in a wedding.
And again, that's something that the florist will arrange.
Any good florist should have a whole selection of tea lights and sundries which you can choose from. I mean, we have every colour tea light imaginable, from crystal to glass, in all the colour range, and there will always be something which we can complement well.
If you do want to have candles, whether it's tall candelabras or little tea lights, make sure you ask your venue check that they're happy for you to have a naked flame. Some venues, especially historical venues, when the bar opens in the evening, they lose their insurance. They lose their insurance. They've got like slightly merry people running around and candles on the table, and they're not allowed to have naked flame. So before you go rushing off buying loads of candles, do check, because you have some great alternatives.
More and more people now, and more venues rather, are having a no naked flame policy. Right. You'll be allowed outside in lanterns, but when you get inside, it will be battery operated candles only. And they're not as bad as that sounds. I think most people have a reaction to battery operated, because years ago when they first hit the market, they were very orange and very sulphurous. And the cheap candles that you buy from places like IKEA or sort of cheap giftware shops, they still sell the lower grade orange that look completely fake. It's like a Felicia Beacon sat on the table, whereas now there's a lot of really good quality, nice, warm, soft white.
And you don't need to worry about wax and
they're great
candles burning out or anything like that. They're just lit and they're done.
They actually make life easier for us.
Yeah, because you just switch them on and they're done.
Exactly, you can get dinner candles the same now that are battery operated and church candles. They're not going to drip, they're not going to melt. Someone's going to open the door and the lot's going to blow out.
And actually, if you are having candles and you're getting married in the winter and the candles are lit at sort of 4 o'clock, probably they'll have to be changed at some point because they will burn down. So battery operated is a brilliant idea. Now, all these lovely vessels, all these beautiful vases and candelabras, does the bride provide that? How does that work?
You don't need to provide the glassware, the sundries. Any good shop will have a whole selection of things which I'm sure you will find something which you like. The point is, I don't want you guys as brides and grooms to spend your money on containers. I would rather you put all the money into the flowers. And if the florist actually works along with you and you advise what's going to happen at the end of the evening, they're tied, you can lift them up, take them home. Just leave the container behind.
So normally a good florist will have a whole props cupboard full of different kind of vases and candelabras, and you were just borrowing them basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Please don't be afraid if your florist doesn't have them. If you live slightly in the country and she doesn't have a great selection of things, don't worry about hiring them from somewhere else and actually asking her to work with them. There's no reason on earth why you should feel guilty that I don't want to put her nose out of joint.
Yeah.
People shouldn't have attitude with that. I mean, we have a huge selection, and even so, we still from time to time have brides that specifically sing something somewhere, and that's what she wants, and it's like, exactly, she has it, we'll collect it. There's no reason why you should feel bad over that. At the end of the day, it's your wedding.
I mean, what Andy's saying here is how every florist should be, that if you have a budget and you have something that you really want, they should be able to work with you. Equally, they will advise you. So if you want your wedding room to be full of lily of the valley and you've got £500, that's just not an option. But they should be able to. Yes. They might say, well, you know what, just have a bit of lily of the valley in your bouquet, and they'll suggest an alternative. But you will always work with a budget and an idea to come
a budget is a starting guide for florists. You can sit in a wedding consultation and you can list and you can show pictures of magazines, etc., etc. But you do need to give your florist some idea of budget, and they should be realistic. If your budget is unrealistic, they should warn you of that, and then talk about alternatives and how to spend the budget wisely.
Yeah.
Because you can't do without displays outside the main entrance. I mean, once you go in, the only person that really benefits from those flowers after are the smokers.
Yes.
So you could quite easily not have them there and have a few clusters of lanterns either side.
So your crucial ones really is your bouquet, you have something on the table.
The table is the main thing.
Yeah.
After the bouquet, the table is where you sit for two and a half hours, and that's where you should put most of the budget.
And as you can see, just by having one lovely arrangement, you really don't need anything else.
Okay.
Or you're sitting down food, job done. You don't need to spend loads and loads of money on everything else if you're just going for
exactly.
lovely
The thing with flowers is it's the one part of the day which is actually your personality. Once you've got your dress, you're in a beautiful venue, it's not yours. You haven't decorated it, you haven't chosen the furniture. It all comes as a package. So this is the one part of the day, and I guess I'm slightly biased here.
No.
But
no, it's true.
But you have chosen those, and all your guests are going to sit at that table and think, you know what? I wouldn't have thought she would have gone for pink, but she has, and it works really well. I'm surprised, And people will talk about the flowers.
Now let me just ask you about trends. Mm-hmm. We will all like to know what's cool, what's in, what's happening this year. Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about what you're working with now.
This year's hottest trend is definitely gold. gold is really coming through. Not
So we've
just
seen
golden
lots
in
of
colour,
silver
but gold
recently.
accents.
Okay.
We saw gold start to filter in on the runways from Fashion Weeks in February last year and also September. And now it's filtering down, and we've got a lot of brides now which are.
So how do you bring gold in?
Gold.
You've got
Gold is a
gold
difficult
tones,
colour.
yeah.
You know, gold is kind of a dirty yellow or a bronzy orange.
Yeah.
You know, in flowers it's a difficult colour to work with. So we tend to advise we'll use it with sundries, which is why our stand is, you know, we've gone on trend and we've gone with gold sundries over there.
No, that looks amazing. Do you go and have a look. Now, before you go, Andy, one final question. You've got all these amazing flowers, and at the end of the day, you know, all the guests leave, everyone goes home. What can we do with them? You just feel so awful just to sort of leave them sitting on the table.
I mean, please do take them, because all florists, they see them as a nuisance afterwards, so they go into a bin bag or into a skip. They don't get reused. People generally don't have the time, they don't have the space or the facilities to bring them back, cut them back down and reuse them. Explain to your florist that you want to give them as gifts afterwards, and then they will tie them, for example, like that one. Or in the case of this one, the gold bowl is, you know, it belongs to me, but inside is a plastic dish. So you can lift them out and actually take them home, and you just leave these behind.
So the vessels belong to the florist, the flowers belong to you, and absolutely get them home.
Take everything you can, just leave them.
I mean, even put a raffle ticket under one chair on each table, and whoever's the lucky one with the raffle ticket under their chair gets to take the flowers home. I just think such a lovely
the
thing
bigger
to say.
displays are slightly more difficult. If you've
Yes,
got
anything that's
pedestals
wired or something like that.
If you've got a few of them, it's worth speaking to your florist about what we do at Wild About is if we have a larger wedding on, we will send a junior florist in about 11 p.m, 10 p.m, something like that, depending on what time the wedding is finished. And for a small fee, she or he will break down the big pedestals and such and make them into little bouquets. So you can either give them to your guests, have a pre-printed luggage tag, something with a little quirky message. So at the end of the night, they get handed a bunch which has been made up from the big thing.
Yeah.
Because
Or in
otherwise
the
they will
morning,
be.
if you're in a
If you're
hotel,
staying, exactly.
you know, a little thing on everyone's plate at breakfast. I think that's lovely. Everyone took the flowers home after our wedding, and it was lovely seeing everyone leave with all these flowers, and they lasted for weeks, because when you buy the flowers, they are absolutely fresher than we will ever find them again. Thank you so much. We could chat all day about flowers, they're so lovely. Do go and see Andy and the team at Wild About there. I can see the stand from here, E100, and he's full of advice and information. And thank you for joining us, and have a great last half hour at the show, and a wonderful, wonderful wedding day, most importantly. Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks.